Would the sound man please turn Mr. Reagan's mic off for a minute? Is this on? Mr. Green, did you turn that microphone off? You asked for me if you would... I am paying for this microphone, Mr. Green.
Well, that was a defining moment, one of the many amazing moments from Reagan's 1980 campaign for president, a campaign that revitalized the Republican Party and the conservative movement. Here to tell us about it, author Craig Shirley. He has a new book out, Rendezvous with Destiny, Ronald Reagan and the Campaign That Changed America. Pat Buchanan is still with us. Look at that iconic shot. I had that picture up in my room for 20 years. Wow. My wife made me take it down. So anyway, Craig, of course, we were showing that remarkable scene in New Hampshire back in the 1980 primary when Ronald Reagan, in that moment, saved his campaign. He was trailing badly to George W. Bush after Iowa, wasn't he?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He lost the Iowa caucuses in a huge upset to George Bush. His campaign was heavily in debt. There was gross mismanagement of the campaign. And fortunately, he had 5 weeks to write his campaign between the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. If you took the primary schedule of today, where New Hampshire falls 1 week after Iowa, Ronald Reagan would have lost the Republican nomination to George Bush.
Now, of course, when they finally got to the convention, Reagan was trying to have this dream ticket set up between himself and Gerald Ford. Talk about
Former President Ford. Well, there was a short list of candidates: Howard Baker, George Bush. Reagan and his team probably, should have decided early to take George Bush, but there was a lot of opposition inside Reagan's camp from taking former Ambassador George Bush, even though he'd come in second in the primaries, was a proven vote getter in the suburbs, and was popular with Republican women.
But Reagan didn't want Bush, did he?
That's right. Yeah, Reagan didn't want Bush, and there were three things that really factored into their relationship. One was that Reagan had opposed his son, George W. Bush, the 43rd president, when he was running for Congress in 1978 down in Texas. He had a conservative primary opponent that Reagan supported over George W. Bush, and that obviously didn't set well with the Bush family. And then you go from there to the Nashua debate, where Reagan was unimpressed with Bush and telling people in confidence that he melts under pressure. And then, of course, Bush attacking Reagan's economic proposal as voodoo economics, which the Reaganites really flipped out over. So by the time they get to Detroit in July of 1980, there's a lot of animosity between the Reagan camps and what is remaining of the Bush camps.
And Pat Buchanan's with us. Pat, one of the many things I learned from this book, I thought I knew an awful lot about Reagan, but this book I learned so much. But I never knew that Ronald Reagan got involved in the primary in 1978 against George W. Bush.
Well, that is amazing. I was unaware of that too. But let me ask you, Craig, Carter had a horrible year. His party was divided. They had taken the hostages in Iran, held them almost a year. The Soviets were in Afghanistan. The economy was in the tank. Why was Carter still running pretty close, and it was too close to call? You had a week before the election, before that debate.
Yeah, Pat, you're absolutely right. The reason was because Reagan had not yet closed the sale with the American voter. He had gone ahead of Carter in the polls early in June of 1980, and then went way ahead after his successful convention in July of 80. But then the campaign, put themselves on hold, and he started to drift down. And as when I interviewed Pat Caddell, he went through the whole litany that you did about the problems of the Carter campaign. They decided there was only one way that Carter could win re-election, and that was to destroy Ronald Reagan. And that they attempted to do by, calling him a racist and a warmonger. He was going to divide America. He was a grade B actor. He couldn't handle up to the job. And after the weeks of pounding, you ended up in mid-October with Carter ahead in the polls and closing on Reagan in the Electoral College, which is why Reagan had to debate Jimmy Carter. But even then, in the debate, didn't really close the sale until he looked in the camera and said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" That's the line that closed the sale with the American voter.
And that's really when Jimmy Carter melted. Yes, Mika.
The book really brings you back. And by the way, on our website, we're going to have, when we did the Reagan Library?
Yeah.
Pictures of Pat Buchanan, video of him walking through Reagan's Air Force One, the first time he's been to the library ever. Craig, before you you go, this new poll shows that a majority of Americans consider themselves politically conservative. Does that jibe with the numbers of Republicans out there, or is there a divide perhaps growing?
It's an excellent question, Mika. There's a great divide, and in a way it's right. It's like the Republican Party was in 1977. After Richard Nixon, the corruption of Watergate, after the ineptitude of Gerald Ford, by January of 1977, only 18% of the American people claimed allegiance to the Republican Party, even though something like 40% said they were right of center. To show the fecklessness of the party, only 11% of voters under 30 claimed allegiance to the Republican Party. So there's the natural boundary of the Republican Party, and then there's the greater boundary of the conservative movement.
All right.
And once again, that
Shirley.
fight actually is being fought up in a special election, New York 22.
Absolutely.
And actually,
being played out up there.
Conservatives doing well. Craig, Shirley, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. Of course, the book, you got to go out and get it. It is Rendezvous with Destiny, and it tells you things about Reagan's 80 campaign you've never known before. Even Pat Buchanan didn't know that tidbit about George W. Bush, and he knows everything about